Hello there. Welcome to the Kirk Minahan Wrap Up Show for the Monday, May 3rd, 2021 episode. It was WPLM 2024 in regards to Kirk's return to radio. And there was a little controversy, there was some talk on the show about whether or not Kirk would win the September book in 2024 if he decided to come back. Steve, very hesitant to say yes. Matter of fact, I believe at one point Steve even said he would not compete. So that's some shocking words out of the mouth of the producer of the biggest radio talent in all of America. And I'm joined today, as always, for the Monday shows, Andrew Augustus. Andrew, how you doing?
Good. Fun fact, I actually used to work with the program director of Easy 99.1, Mr. Scott Reniche. It's not Renicky, Reniche, it's Reniche.
Reniche?
Reniche.
Oh, you did. How do you know him?
I used to work with him when I did a summer working at WBSM in New Bedford. I believe, what was it? One of the interns who was around for a little bit, like Fun 107. It's Town Square Media. And it's actually, he's friendly with the guy that came in and helped Howie after Steve left, Taylor.
So yes, I none of that makes any sense. I don't know. I don't know Howie and Taylor, all this other shit.
Yeah. So if Steve is listening to this, that's if he wants to get in touch with them, I'd recommend going through Taylor, and they could probably get them to actually talk. Because I mean, he listens, he enjoyed it, and he played along on the Friday show, and it was good to see him playing along again on Monday. So. I think that there could be something. If they want to bring him in, I just reach out. I think he might play along.
Now, it doesn't seem to me like Steve is very interested in making a return to radio and taking a massive pay cut, as Kirk would say. But we'll get that to a little bit. First thing, Andrew, is I have a question for you.
Shoot.
If I tell you that I'm giving you 50 cents and a nickel back, that is 45 cents, correct? Because Mike did not seem to get this joke, how the tickets were 45 cents because it was 50 cents and nickel back. It was I don't know. I thought that was a funny way to start the show, and
I even put it out yesterday. I was like, well, we know, and it must have been in I'm saying that's like a 5th grade word math problem for that situation. And even when he was talking about how he came on Kirk and off. And he's like, and the guys are going to make fun of me and say how much they hate me. I go, I don't hate you, Mike. It's just, and it was a funny moment because you could hear just in the awkwardness and the silence of Mike thinking, trying to figure out, even after the second time Kirk explained it, no, it would be this. And he's like, wait. And then that, oh shit moment clicks on, and it was just had me dying laughing.
Yeah, to be fair, you were absolutely ripping Mike Saturday night. It was bad. It was just completely bad. You and the other two hooligans were just absolutely ripping. Oh my God, the things you were saying about his Patreon, and don't even get me started. What you were saying about Alba and shit, that was just not cool. But yeah, Mike did not get that joke to start off. I always like it when Kirk starts off, with something like that, because you don't know if he's being serious. My first thought was, I thought concert tickets were going to be pretty expensive, with limited capacity and all these other things. And then he's like, no, I'm serious. And then he said the joke, and it was like, okay, Kirk, you got us, Kirk. It was I don't know. It was very funny. I love it. I love it when Kirk starts off the show. It was a very lighthearted show, very funny show today. I don't know if you have anything to say about the opening.
I liked it. It was nice to know that even Kirk said that us on Kirk and Off are probably good guys, which I think is a fair enough. I mean, we've all dug our own graves one way or another in the eyes of the show. So it was funny to hear that, but it was, again, appreciative to have Mike on. Great talk to get some good background. Even hearing, my favorite part with that was, Kirk was right. Mike was the big guy, the big cock in the room that day. His dad was scared, and we appreciate him coming on. And we're not going to trash him that much anymore unless he does something where we can't figure out 50 minus 5 in a word problem. So
true. So yeah. So that's how they started off, and then they kind of got into they talked about the Calhoun event on Saturday, which I think went very well. It seemed that everyone who was there had a lot of fun. And then it rolled into Kirk announcing that I am in charge of Madawaska 2021, which I'm going to say I am taking this very seriously. Madawaska 2021 is going to be a very fun event. I'm just trying to figure out a couple things before I make any announcements, like how many people will be involved, where exactly it's going to certain events are going to take place. So hopefully I'll have all of that for everyone by the end of the week. So
Do you take another stab at singing a song about Madawaska and planning Madawaska?
I love Madawaska so much. Kirk gave me the chance to plan it. Then I drive up to Madawaska and I get the show. Da, 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 just like Madawaska. It will be really cool. I don't know. I don't know. There we go. There's my version of Just Like a Prayer. Except it's Madawaska version. So, what are your thoughts on Kirk giving me the responsibility of planning what some say is the biggest, the some people, and not the biggest, but people say it's the most exclusive, most prized possession of last year, was to say you went to Madawaska. Kirk's handing the responsibility over to me. So I have to plan the events, I have to plan the food, I have to plan, the show itself. It's a big responsibility. So as a fan, what's your perspective on it?
I mean, congratulations, one. I think that puts a little pressure on you because it is it was the exclusive event that everyone liked to talk about, especially just before the pandemic. And two, it was rumored to be the Hall of Fame ceremony as well. So
that's right.
That is another aspect that we're going to have to throw into this. And with it looks like up in Maine, we have the unlimited outdoors now, and we are in the summer, so we can have an outdoor event. We can have 100% capacity. So we there is a lot of potential there for a fun experience up in northern Maine. Are we going to see a return of WCXX? Are we going to be reaching out to Mr. Chandler again? There's all these opportunities that I think you can take a hold of here.
Yeah, I have a couple ideas floating around, but before I make anything definite, I want to run them by the people at Barstool and Steve, obviously, and Kirk, to make sure. I will say though, so it was always my understanding that Mike would be coming up to Madawaska. I believe because even on the show, on yesterday's show, they were talking to Mike, and when they changed the date from June 5th to June 12th due to scheduling conflicts, Kirk was like, "Mike, that works for you, right?" So I reached out to Mike. I booked a hotel room. One bed. He gets the bed. I get the floor, as we know. And I said, "Hey, if I got everything settled up," and he's like, "Yeah, you'd probably have to drive me up again." So it's not 100% that Mike would be up there, but I have a strong feeling Mike will make his return to Madawaska. I'd like to make it kind of like, there's things to do on Friday. There's things to do on Saturday. There's even going to be, a couple things to do on Sunday for people to come up there. So hopefully we get I get the ticket amount, the availability pretty soon, and I'll be, relaying that to the people.
The Minuteman moment. Get Mike a little sauced up again on the Friday night to talk about.
I don't think
Blind Mike project.
If you listen to the most recent Blind Mike project, you would know that Mike has kind of traded off his his drinking for a little bit of doing the edibles of marijuana. So I don't think that would be an option anymore. But no, he was
high. I'm sure there'll be no shortage of edibles up there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Mike's going to make his return to Madawaska. I think it's going to be a blast. The only thing I will say is I didn't know if it was a joke or not when they called me up and said you are now in charge of Madawaska. I was just walking around my house and I get the phone call from Steve. Answer it, and then the first thing Kirk says is, "You are now in charge of Madawaska," which I did not necessarily know what that meant. I didn't know if that means I'm in charge of planning the thing. I did not know if it was just a joke, just being like, "Oh, Justin wants to do the Kowloon or whatever, so now fuck it, he gets to do Madawaska or whatever." But it sounds like it's going to be a fun time. I'm excited. I think I'm pretty decent at planning events. There should be lots to do. Hopefully an outdoor lunch sort of thing, cookout sort of thing. That would be Very, very much appreciated. So I can't wait. Do you plan on going, Andrew?
I'm hoping to. That is my plan right now, is to be up in Madawaska. That is my hope. That is my plan. I even saw my co-host buddies like, oh, the guys I've talked to might not be able to go. But then someone correctly pointed out he met a bunch of people, almost 30 people at the Kowloon who are probably
more than 30 people there.
So it's like, well, I can't count past 10. So
True.
Let's just figure we'll leave it at that. But it was like 30, 40. You had a great crowd for that. We meet all these people there. They're going to go up. So it's going to be a hot ticket event. I have total faith in you for the fact that you got, again, as Steve correctly said on the show, you got all those people to show up Saturday night with you being the draw. Now you're going to have Madawaska. This is going to be, I'm thinking positively for this one. I have faith in you, Justin.
Yeah, I think the other Minifans for the draw. I was not the draw to go to the Kowloon, but it was, like I said, it was a good time. So there was another point in today's show, which I thought was very funny. The Kirk Minahan world, branches off, and there's other podcasts that are, like Kirk and Off, that are very, very like dependent on the Kirk Minahan show, and then there are other podcasts that they're in the universe, but they can survive, quote unquote survive. They don't rely on Kirk Minahan content to survive, even though their fan base might be 99.99% Minifans. I think the clip of Louis J. Gomez doing an ad read for Quantum Week was one of the funnier things I've heard on the show in the most recent. Just, you could hear it in Mike's voice that Louis J. Gomez is to Blind Mike as like Kirk is to most Minifans. Mike loves Louis J. Gomez. He listens to all of his podcasts. He's had him on his podcast. That was a huge get for him. It was great. Go back and listen on the Blind Mike Project. It was one of the free episodes. You can just hear it. I like it how they did not tell Mike. They must have done this to, at some level, troll Mike, because he said he was just listening, and suddenly they said, "Let me tell you about my friends at Quantum Week. This is a great podcast, and I'm glad. I like Chris. I'm a little iffy on Matt right now. Me and Matt got into kind of a heated debate on Twitter. I have him blocked at the moment."
Is this over the Star Wars thing?
Yes, this is over him ranking Revenge of the Sith as the worst Star Wars movie. So yeah, he'll be blocked until I calm down. But I think it was so funny just to hear Louis J. Gomez, who, like Kirk said, has never listened to an episode of Quantum Week, was reading the copy verbatim and was saying like, "Oh, yeah," unlike other pop culture podcasts, they hit you with the truth. They're not going to lie to you, and that was very funny to see. And I'm glad Mike was the one that caught that. It wasn't, it wasn't something that Chris or Matt sent to Steve or Kirk beforehand, and they kind of played them. I like it how like Mike got to react on his own on Twitter, and then he came on the show. He's like, "Can you fucking believe these guys?" But no, good for them for advertising, reaching out, and growing their podcast. My first thought was, good for them. I mean, maybe in a couple months, Kirk won't be able to say that the majority of their listeners are from the Kirk Minahan Show universe, because if they're getting these Louis J. Gomez fans, they're getting all these other.
There was a bump from it. Like, that would be. I'm curious to see what the Louis J. Gomez bump is from that ad, and I think you're. It's got to be a little troll job. I mean, to have for it to come out when it did, and to have Mike catch it on its own, you got to think Chris and Matt. Like, I'm going to take the guess.
It has to be.
It's going to be a troll job, and if it is, bravo! It's so well executed, and now. Are we going to see the Blind Mike Project start popping up on other programs?
You know what I think? See, the question was brought up was, who is the alpha? Who is like the brains behind Quantum Week? I voted for Chris. I think Chris is kind of people said Matt has the background in marketing, but I believe it was Chris who was the marketer who would sell like signs and stuff to minor league baseball teams. I believe that was Chris. So I'm giving it to Chris. I think Chris kind of. He doesn't produce the podcast, but I think he kind of steers more in the direction of where it goes. I think they really thought to themselves, "Hey, if we do this thing with Louis J. Gomez, we're getting a 2-for-1 here. We are not only going to be talked about on, we're getting a 3-for-1. We're going to be talked about on Louis J. Gomez's podcast, whatever the Seinfeld one is. He's going to be talked about on the Blind Mike Project, and they're going to be talked about in the Kirk Minahan show. So I mean, and like Kirk said, there's plenty of new viewers or listeners from the case who have come over to listen to the Kirk Minahan show that are new. And bam, now they're hearing about Quantum Week. Maybe they'll go check it out. I'm sure they saw I'm sure they saw a bump from Louis J. Gomez, and I'm sure they saw an even bigger bump after being talked about on Quantum Week. I think it was genius marketing from either Chris or Carano.
I think personally, you're really hoping it's Chris right now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Me and Corona have a little bit of beef right now, but that's fine. I'll put that aside. I'm not one to hold personal grudges. But the only thing I will say is that it was just hilarious just to hear Louis J. Gomez say here, and Mike's just like kind of cringing in his seat. I think it's different. I think Mike wouldn't have to advertise the Patreon. I think it's very difficult to advertise a Patreon to new listeners rather than advertise like the free podcast and then hoping people
that's
like
the way
the
you
free podcast. Yes.
You get it's good. You give them a little taste of the product, and then if they want to dive in, you let them go full in with the Blind Mike Project. It was very fun to listen. It was funny, and I think at the end you could tell there is. I think I wish I was with Mike the first time he listened to it, because just to hear Luis Gomez say the phrase "my friends," I wanted to see his very first initial reaction to that and how like, what is this type of thing.
I'm sure. You're talking about Mike or Lewis?
Mike. I want to see Mike's initial reaction, be like, friends, Quantum, what? Like,
well, I could just see him sitting there just going, those sons of bitches, just like smiling to himself, going, hey, those sons of bitches. So like I said, good for go check out Quantum Week. They're a great pop culture podcast. They go through the movies and the music and of a certain date of the previous 40 years. So that is there anything else you want to say about the Quantum Week thing? Because I found that very, very funny.
It was a great move by them, and it's as someone I've been listening to Quantum Week ever since Matt got really involved and started talking about it on the show. It's been a great listen. I'm excited. I'm hoping one day that they do a Caddyshack podcast. I just love Caddyshack, and I feel that would be a fun one. But good for them. Glad to see they're doing well, and great troll job. I'm counting this as a troll job. Great move. Great move.
Yeah, great move. So the other thing that was kind of stuff, we'll get the Blind Mike stuff out of the way before we get to Rico Bosco and Kirk's return to radio. I think Mike slipped in that he has a $1 tier now on Patreon, which is, go to patreon.com/blindmike. I know Quantum Week had a $1 tier. I think Mike's just trying to see if, there's people out there who just kind of want to support him. And I believe you get access to all the live streams as they happen with the $1 tier. So go check that out. Like I said on the show on Monday, Mike says a couple things that aren't, he doesn't hold anything back. You get the uncensored Mike Geary on the Patreon. So I thought that was interesting that, when Mike came out with a $1 tier. So make sure to go check that out. Support our guy Blind Mike, and I don't know if you have anything to say about that. I just kind of wanted to sneak that in.
No, it's I'm happy for Mike. I'm happy he's doing well. He seems again, and even having him on, it's I've been saying this for weeks that his confidence level is just so much different than when it was from when he was doing it 5 days a week. It's refreshing to hear. He comes in, he's doing great, and I'm glad to see he's being as successful as I think he's being, even with like the more on money. The one fun fact though is I still can see that he can be a little irked with Steve for because I guess Robinson had a little bug in his ear to sell all of his Dogecoin before this most recent explosion.
And it would have been worth like $50,000 or $60,000 right now. So
yeah,
that's kind of tough. So
it's a tough loss for that. But you know what? Maybe with get more of these $1 subscriptions, and he can make it back in no time.
That's right. So, best of luck to Mike with all that. Let's head over. So Rico Bosco, the Dustin tournament is actually taking place today, the first round. The second round is taking place tomorrow. And so are the semifinals and the finals. So Kirk Steve and Rico Bosco are on a team. It sounds like Kirk and Steve are going to be remote. I'm not sure if they're going to be not in Watertown. It's of my knowledge that they will be in Watertown, so that I'm sure Steve will have that all set up and everything, and have good Wi-Fi and have everything be available to them. But when Kirk said today, he's like, I'd rather talk to Kingpin Pete about Rico Bosco than actually talk to Rico Bosco. I thought that was very telling of what the future of this relationship is going to be. I think Rico, it has you want to talk about someone who has a hairline trigger, where if you say or if you like the wrong thing on Twitter, you'll get blocked. He's the reason why people have left Barstool before. Barstool employees have quit because they've said it's either me or Rico, and Portnoy goes, well, I mean, I'm not firing either of you. So they end up quitting. So I think the relationship with Rico Bosco is going to be quite an interesting one, especially depending on how this tournament works out. Because I don't know if you saw, Andrew, but the Dozen tournament recently released. So they'll be releasing one game a day for the rest of the month of May. And I believe the Team Kirk Minahan versus whoever wins against Team Nightmare or Team Misfits will be on May 18th. So we still have a little bit more than 2 weeks until we get to see the conclusion of how Kirk did in the trivia, which I think is going to be tough to try to keep quiet because they're going to want to talk about it. They're going to want to have Rico on to talk about it. I'm not sure Rico will stay quiet. So I don't know. I think the Rico Bosco relationship is hilarious, and it's only going to either get better, and Kirk for some reason becomes the only person at Barstool that like Rico lets get away with things, or it's just going to blow up in Rico's face, and it's going to be quite the scene. What are your thoughts on it?
Two things. One, if you think the relationship with Brandon Walker is always like flip floppy back and forth, and that it's just a time bomb with Rico. So
that's great.
So it's what's going to be the big test is when because as you said on the Saturday wrap up show you did for Friday's show, this is an addition because the biggest categories that the team struggles in, your college footballs and a lot of those sport ones, that's Rico's bread and butter. He's into the gambling. He's got that knowledge behind it.
Yep.
But as we've seen, the reason why he's available is because he's such a mental case. He refused to even play against Feidelberg. And then even when they pulled the Gottlieb thing on him, he freaked out about that. And he looked like a sore cat the whole time. So it's going to be really interesting if you have two big head cases on the team. And I know Kirk's going to show up and completely crush it. But is Rico going to be able to hold himself together? Because if it is Team Nightmare, then your Fights is coming back. So, and then Cons will be there too. And he has that issue with Cons. So is he going to pull this off, or is he going to listen to Captain Kirk, nut up, and just destroy them? Because looking at the matchup for their best chance, you want to face Team Nightmare because they're good compared to what it is. So hopefully they can hold on, but I don't see this relationship lasting much longer past the Dozens because Rico's going to say something. Kirk's going to catch wind of it. Kirk's going to call him an idiot. And then Rico's just going to blow up. And then
Rico's going to
end of it. So right now we're all riders. The Minifans got to be riders right now.
Oh, of course. But this is one of the few relationships where I think that it will not be Kirk who blows up the relationship. That it will be Rico who is goes too far and does all that jazz. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see. Like you said, Rico kind of does complement Kirk and Steve very well, especially if they have, Steve's niche categories down. But I just think it was funny how in the group text he said, what did he say? He said, he was like, we just got to no turnovers. It's like, yeah, we're gonna try to get the answers right, Rico. I mean, I don't know what no turnovers means.
And it looked like they said it to Kirk's wrong number too. He's like, he texted us.
Yeah. So.
Like even then, I'm glad I haven't seen Rico say anything about that. But that is like something that small of Kirk just being like, oh, I didn't know he texted me type of thing could set him off just because he thinks he's big timing him, which is the whole thing with Feidelberg that he's pissed off about, because I guess the way Feidelberg said hi wasn't good enough for him or something like that.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to watch. I mean, hopefully we can get a good glimpse of him. And I know Kirk doesn't want to talk to him, but hopefully he makes an appearance on the show at some point.
Oh, he's going to.
It would be fun.
Oh, he was 100% going to. I think when Kirk said he doesn't want to talk to him, I think he means like off air. You know, Kirk's not a big off air talking guy. I think he would appreciate having Rico on, especially, you know, just to talk about some of his crazy Barstool stories. And you know, his origin story of him being just a caller into Barstool Radio and somehow getting hired is just good on Rico, living every man's dream.
The typical Barstool hire.
Yeah. So that about does it for Rico. Before we get to Kirk's return to radio, Nantucket Magazine and SNL both suck. I mean, the fact that, you know, you got these people on this comedy show are boycotting or threatening to boycott doing their jobs because they're going to bring on a host who is really rich and is going to, in turn, make them richer because the ratings are going to go up. You know, people are talking about Elon Musk coming up. He is one of the biggest celebrities in the world, and these actors or writers or whatever are crying. I think that's absolutely moronic, and I think an even bigger pussy move is Nantucket Magazine giving a heartfelt apology, or what did they say? It was sincere apology, or yeah.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous just because they had Portnoy on, and and fine, if you want to issue an apology and look flat, it's your right to do it. But it's just so soft. If anything, if you're really that sorry, an editor needs to go. Then you're managing editor. If you want to actually show if you're going to say this was such an error that we needed to publish this whole thing, then you got to hold someone accountable. You knew what you were doing when you put David Portnoy on the cover. You wanted to sell your product, which is a smart move. If we're getting to the point now, which I think is the scarier thing of this is just a censorship that a magazine, we live in the United States of America. Freedom of press is your first one, and you're going to curtail to the people and cower down and cry over the simple fact that you had a subject on. Mm-hmm. God, what would these people be like when Time named Adolf Hitler the person of the year back in the 1940s? Like, they would have gone up in arms about that. I'm sorry that you're going to have these issues. I think it's important to hear from all sides. And you know what? Your response as a newspaper should be write a letter in. We'll publish the letter. Don't freaking just play the BS card of like, oh, we got backlash and now we're sorry. Man up. If you don't like it, you have your space. Publish their ends. Show both sides of the argument. I'm just sick of seeing that only one side is just going to be getting propped up like, oh, that's bad. Oh, yeah, you're right.
I completely agree, except I will say that you know, I see vast differences between David Portnoy and Adolf Hitler.
Oh no, it's huge. But the whole point of it is like,
yes, I know what you mean.
Fact in time that has actually happened for it. So that he was named that. So if like in this day and age, like what was it back in like as I was doing one of the re-listens, I think it was like one of the shows in December of 19 that they were even talking about is that Donald Trump should win Time Person of the Year because that was the newsmaker. All 4 years of his presidency, he was the biggest newsmaker, and that's what that's what that title was for. Now, if you want to change up what it is, then change the criteria, make and do that. But it's just ridiculous that this fear of just coming in and being like, "Oh, we're sorry, we didn't want to offend anyone." And I think it's irresponsible for the public to even and the left to even say, oh, just because you talk to them, you're automatically endorsing them. No, if there was someone who completely hated me and I was doing my own solo podcast and they wanted to come on and I completely disagreed with them, I would have them on just like the show would. The show is all open to having anyone on from any side. It's just one side is willing to talk about it and the other side's not, unless you're all in agreement, which is I think is the scariest thing, because then you get into your own little bubble. Oh, this is all my happy world.
Yeah, I mean, everything Dave Portnoy touches seems to turn to gold, but some people seem to be allergic to gold. So they they get the little taste and then they get a little backlash because he said something about skinny jeans back in like 2011, and people run and cry to whoever's in charge and try to censor him and act like he doesn't exist. Meanwhile, he's fucking supermodels down in Miami, going to the Kentucky Derby, just living his best life. So
if you would tell me you would not trade, if like you're an average American and you would say you would not trade your life to live Dave Portnoy's life, you're a liar, regardless of what your political affiliation.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
There is basically no average person who would give up everything just to trade lives with Dave Portnoy.
Yeah, so that's pretty much, I mean, that's pretty much what it's just, it feels like every week there's a different Dave Portnoy story where, someone's saying, oh, Dave Portnoy's the worst. He's the absolute, I can't believe this, Twitter let him say this, or he said this on this magazine or this TV program. It's just, I mean, the man runs the news cycle. He really is. I mean, he should be Time Person of the Year. He's a fucking G. I'd love to see him host this. I know that was mentioned. So let's talk about Kirk's return to radio on. So he said after his contract, he wants to win the ratings book. He wants to get a job, make a decent salary, and earn the ratings book. Steve said he would not even compete. Mike believes that he will be, he will easily be number one. I'd like to, before I give my input, I'd like to know, Andrew, what your thoughts are on Kirk, where he would rank in the rating book if he went back to a station like WCLB.
WPLM?
Yeah, WPLM, whatever.
I honestly, like, looking at, I just pulled up the Nielsen ratings for Boston right now, and it's one of those situations that I can see as I'm trying to look for WPLM. They're not showing up in the top 20 rankings right now in the Boston market, but I think that's something where there's an opportunity where your highest ranking right now for March was a 7.7. I think he cracks the top 10 in his first month, top 5 in the first book, second book, top 5, third book, number 1. The loyalty of the Minifans is something I think is very underrated. And it's one of the reasons why that he's been so successful is because you have these people coming up. And even when I was talking with some of the Minifans at the Kowloon event, you hear about people like Kevin from Bristol, not because of like from calling into the Kirk Minahan Show podcast. He was calling in when Kirk was starting on EEI, and these characters stay through. They've been battered, beaten. Again, I've been told to jump off a cliff. Kevin got roasted, and yet it's still loyalty, going to all the sponsors, supporting the show through and through. You can't really properly verbalize how important that would be. And with the major of the market already being in Boston, as soon as you get that bump in, he's going to be easily work his way up. And yeah, it's going to be a big pay cut from what he's making now. But as the whole conversation was going, I kept going back and forth. I'm like, is he serious? Is he not serious? He sounds pretty serious. I don't know. Is this contact? But I think it's something that if he were to put his mind to it, he would, within 3 books, be number 1 easily.
So my thoughts on this I agree with you, is that if he took the Kirk Minahan Show or some form of talk radio, not necessarily the Kirk Minahan Show, and he brought it to any station, no matter how small, he would start charting, he would start winning books. But I'm not sure how long it would last if he just does kind of like the WCXX show. Where if he's just talking, like he says he wants to talk about music, and I love Kirk. I'll listen to him to death. I'll follow him anywhere he goes. I'll listen to him. I'll support him. I'll do whatever I can for him. But I know there are a certain group of Minifans who like hearing Kirk talk, and there are people who like hearing him, hit the post. I'm not entirely sure if it was just Kirk hitting the post all day. With not really talking about today's events or inside like world things, how necessarily long that would last. But I still think even if he just did a radio show and streaming numbers counted, I could just see a bunch of Minifans just turning it on. Do you remember when I read Julie DeCara's book, how she said if there's like a woman broadcaster doing a game, just even if you can't watch it, just turn it on in your house, so like the Nielsen ratings will collect it. I could see Kirk Minifans doing somewhat of the same thing, where they just kind of turn on the whatever station Kirk is on. And even if it's music playing 90% of the time, and he's only giving you quips about the band, it's it would still show up. I'm not entirely sure it would get to number one if it wasn't a pure talk-based station.
I think it would. I honestly, at least in the beginning, because people would be interested in knowing Kirk, like from listening to him and his style. I don't think he would just let it. He wouldn't be your typical, like you hear on these shows of playing music. He would put his own spin on it, and I think that in and of itself would make it entertaining. And at the end of the day, we all know who his number one fan would be, Mr. Jared Carrabis, because there's no one more than Jared Carrabis.
So so those are my thoughts on Kirk returning to radio. The last question I wanted to ask you, Andrew, before we wrap things up here on the Wrap Up Show, is Kirk said, it was mentioned on the Friday show with Jared. They asked Mike, is Kirk currently the biggest media personality in Boston? I want to know.
In Boston?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with yes. I think that he is still so well regarded up here, and it would be one of those situations like I was saying, that if you put him on any radio station, you see a huge spike that gets a top 10 rating almost automatically. And if you think you take that with like if like a Mike Felger or an Ordway were to go to a different radio station and tried the same, they would not get the same numbers.
I completely agree. If Felger goes off and makes his own podcast, I don't see it being a success like the Kirk Minahan show would. I was thinking about this, and I thought to myself, the only person I think could really challenge Kirk right now as the biggest media personality, I don't know if you consider him a media personality or just a straight up celebrity at this point, is Dave Portnoy. I think
Boston. I honestly, I don't consider Dave Portnoy Boston anymore.
Oh, you don't? Oh, I consider him heavy Boston.
He's just. When was the last time? I mean, his Mike Portnoy is more Boston than Dave Portnoy right now, in my opinion.
No, when I think of Dave Portnoy, still I know he's a Miami guy now, but he's still very. I think Barstool's number one state is still Massachusetts. When I think of Barstool, I still think of Boston. When I think of Portnoy, I still think of Boston. So he might be the only one that could actually challenge Kirk, just because of his celebrity, especially with like the TikTok stuff. With like, I would definitely say Dave would win the younger crowd over. As far as like being a bigger media personality, but I do think Kirk, if he's not number one, would be the number two media personality still in Boston.
Yeah, I just with everything that Portnoy's done, I think he's evolved from Boston, and I
think he has, but I don't think Boston has evolved from him. I think very much so. People still, when they think of Portnoy, they think of Boston.
If he ran for mayor of Boston again and won, then I'd change my mind. How's that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think there's any plans of him doing that. So
no, there's none. That was brought up on a show a couple weeks ago. And he's like, no, I'm not living in Massachusetts again. Then I don't blame him.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to talk about from yesterday's show?
No, it was a good show, great listen. And another great thing was the case too. I love hearing him talk about the case and get the reaction from it. It was another great episode of the case. The best
episode yet.
It's just every episode's been better than the last, and their trajectory is going great. Kirk still seems optimistic that it's going to be done in 8 episodes. I'm like, there's still so much I want to know. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was more. I hope there's more, but they just keep doing a great job on it. And the one thing I was thinking of was that what are the fans going to get first? Another Kevin Mailer lie detector test or Steve Robinson's first lie detector test?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. I should have said this at the beginning, but if you haven't subscribed and have given a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, please everyone do that to the case. Get those, just the more people that hear about Jennifer and Faith and all these people's stories, the better, the more information that comes in. So the best thing you can do, honestly, is just share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, give it 5 stars, write a review for it. And that about does it. That about does it today. Andrew, any final thoughts?
I'm just happy to be back. Happy the show is going well and everything's going good. This has been a good week so far.
It has. So I will talk to you guys all tomorrow on the wrap up show, and I hope